The Russian Empire was a colossal entity. It stretched across vast continents, from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean. The Tsars, its absolute rulers, were the architects of this immense domain. They were driven by ambition, faith, and an unyielding desire for power. Their story is one of conquest, colonization, and the forging of a unique civilization that straddled Europe and Asia. For over 3 centuries, the Romanov dynasty and their predecessors pushed the boundaries of their state ever outward. They transformed a collection of disparate principalities into one of the largest empires in human history. This was not a gentle process. It involved brutal wars, shrewd diplomacy, and the subjugation of countless peoples. The Tsars believed it was their divine right, their destiny, to rule over these vast lands. Their legacy is complex, marked by both remarkable achievements and terrible suffering. Key figures such as Ivan the Great, Ivan the Terrible, Peter the Great, and Catherine the Great stand out. Each left an indelible mark on the empire's ever-expanding map. This essay will explore the forging of the Russian Empire's vast reach. We will journey from its early beginnings under Ivan III to its zenith before its sudden collapse in 1917. The story of Russia's imperial expansion begins with Ivan III. He reigned as Grand Prince of Moscow from 1462 to 1505. Ivan was a shrewd and patient ruler. He is often called Ivan the Great for his crucial role in uniting Russian lands. Before him, various Russian principalities were fragmented and often paid tribute to the Mongol Golden Horde. Ivan III methodically worked to change this reality, laying the groundwork for a powerful, centralized state. One of Ivan III's most significant achievements was the formal end of Mongol-Tatar overlordship. This culminated in the Great Stand on the Ugyara River in 1480. The Golden Horde's forces faced Ivan's army but ultimately retreated without a decisive battle. This event marked a symbolic liberation of Russia from Mongol control. Ivan III expanded Muscovy's territory significantly through both conquest and diplomacy. He annexed the vast Republic of Novgorod in 1478, a crucial commercial center. Ivan III saw himself as the heir to the Byzantine emperors, adopting the title Sovereign of all Rus. Under Ivan III, Moscow began to be conceptualized as the Third Rome. Ivan III laid the essential foundations upon which his successors would build an even larger empire. Ivan IV, the grandson of Ivan III, dramatically escalated Russia's expansionist policies. He was crowned in 1547 as the first Tsar of all the Russias. His later years were marked by paranoia and brutal repression, earning him the moniker Ivan the Terrible. A primary focus of Ivan the Terrible's foreign policy was the East and South. The conquest of the Khanate of Kazan in 1552 was a major triumph. 4 years later, in 1556, Ivan's armies conquered the Khanate of Astrakhan. These victories significantly altered the geopolitical landscape. Following the fall of Kazan and Astrakhan, the vast unknown territory of Siberia lay open to Russian adventurers. The primary lure of this immense land was fur. Sable, fox, and ermine pelts were highly prized in Europe and fetched enormous prices. This soft gold, as it was called, fueled the relentless eastward drive. The Stroganovs, a wealthy merchant family, played a key role in initiating this expansion. They received a charter from Ivan the Terrible to explore and colonize lands east of the Ural Mountains. The Stroganovs hired a Cossack leader named Yermak Timofeyevich to lead an expedition into Siberia. In 1582, Yermak and his small band of well-armed Cossacks defeated Kuchum Khan, the ruler of the Khanate of Sibir. This victory marked the beginning of Russia's conquest of Siberia. The conquest of Siberia was a gradual but persistent process. It was carried out by small groups of Cossacks, fur trappers, and government agents. They moved along the great Siberian rivers, establishing fortified settlements called ostrogs. The conquest of Siberia added an enormous territory to the Russian Empire, fundamentally shaping its identity as a Eurasian power. At the turn of the 18th century, Tsar Peter I, known as Peter the Great, dramatically reoriented Russia's focus. Obsessed with the West, he believed Russia needed to modernize. His grand embassy to Western Europe in 1697 to 1698 profoundly influenced his vision. Peter's primary foreign policy objective was to secure access to the Baltic Sea. The Great Northern War, from 1700 to 1721, was a long and arduous conflict. The Treaty of Nystad in 1721 confirmed Russia's acquisition of key territories. The founding of St. Petersburg in 1703 was Peter's most symbolic achievement. Built on newly conquered land, it was intended to be Russia's window to the west. Catherine II, known as Catherine the Great, ascended to the Russian throne in 1762. An enlightened despot, she continued the work of Peter the Great in modernizing Russia and expanding its borders. While Peter had focused on the north and west, Catherine directed much of her attention southward. Her primary target was the Ottoman Empire, which controlled the northern shores of the Black Sea. Access to this warm water sea was a long-standing Russian ambition. Catherine waged two successful wars against the Ottoman Empire. The First Russo-Turkish War, from 1768 to 1774, ended with the Treaty of Kukuk-Kainarka. This treaty was a landmark victory for Russia. It granted Russia significant territories along the Black Sea coast, including key ports. The Second Russo-Turkish War, from 1787 to 1792, further solidified Russia's dominance in the region. Catherine's southern conquests dramatically altered Russia's geopolitical position. Her ambition and strategic acumen significantly enlarged the empire, fulfilling a dream cherished by many of her predecessors. While Catherine the Great was expanding Russia's influence in the south, she also played a decisive role in the west. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, once a major European power, was internally weak and politically unstable by the late 18th century. Its powerful neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, saw an opportunity to aggrandize themselves at Poland's expense. Catherine skillfully manipulated Polish politics to Russia's advantage, paving the way for its dismemberment. The partitions of Poland occurred in three stages: 1772, 1793, and 1795. In each partition, Russia, Prussia, and Austria seized large swaths of Polish territory. Russia gained the lion's share, acquiring vast lands that now form much of modern-day Belarus, Ukraine, and Lithuania. The final partition in 1795 completely erased Poland-Lithuania from the map of Europe. For Russia, the partitions brought millions of new subjects, including a large Jewish population, into the empire. The acquisition of Polish lands significantly shifted Russia's western frontier. It brought the empire into direct contact with Central Europe and increased its involvement in European affairs. The 19th century saw the Russian Empire continue its relentless expansion, though the focus shifted to new regions. Having largely secured its western and southern frontiers in Europe, Russia turned its attention to the Caucasus, Central Asia, and the Far East. The conquest of the Caucasus was a protracted and bloody affair. It involved decades of warfare against the fiercely independent mountain peoples of Chechnya, Dagestan, and Circassia. By the 1860s, Russian military power had prevailed. Central Asia, then known as Turkestan, became another major theater of Russian expansion in the mid to late 19th century. The Khanates of Khiva, Bukhara, and Kokand were gradually subjugated and absorbed into the empire. This expansion was partly driven by economic motives, particularly the desire for cotton. By the end of the century, Russia controlled a vast swath of territory, stretching to the borders of Afghanistan and Persia. In the Far East, Russia expanded its territory along the Amur River, acquiring lands from a weakened China through treaties like Aigun in 1858 and Peking in 1860. The 19th century saw the Russian Empire reach its maximum territorial extent, a colossal landmass stretching across 11 time zones. By the early 20th century, the Russian Empire, forged by centuries of Tsarist ambition, stood as a global giant. It encompassed an immense territory, unparalleled in its diversity of peoples, cultures, and landscapes. The Tsars had succeeded in creating one of the largest contiguous empires in history. However, this vast edifice was built on foundations that were becoming increasingly unstable. Internal pressures were mounting, challenging the very basis of autocratic rule and imperial control. The humiliating defeat in the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905 exposed the empire's military and administrative weaknesses. The 1905 revolution forced Tsar Nicholas II to grant limited political reforms, including the creation of a parliament, the Duma. The final blow came with Russia's involvement in World War I. Military defeats, economic hardship, and staggering casualties led to widespread disillusionment and unrest. In February 1917, revolution erupted in Petrograd, formerly St. Petersburg. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, bringing an end to 3 centuries of Romanov rule and the Tsarist autocracy. The legacy of the Tsar's expansion is profound and multifaceted. While the empire itself collapsed in 1917, its territorial and cultural imprint endures.